Very much, and I'd just like to thank you all for your presentations this morning. I suppose an issue that I'm concerned about, which I have raised directly with the Minister, is in terms of an assessment being carried out in relation to the impact that the huge numbers of students coming into our education system are going to have. I believe that there should have been some assessment done in order to plan adequately and in order to be prepared for what we're facing here, which is unprecedented. I do believe that that was key, and I'd just like to get your thoughts on that. The second thing is, I've had many schools contacting me where they haven't been consulted or collaborated with by the Department of Education. So it would appear that there are gaps there that need to be addressed and that there should be more collaboration. And I'd just like to know, have you discovered the same? I'm sure you have. And I suppose the last point I'll make is, particularly in terms of special education, we have huge gaps there already. I mean, in the county I'm from, County Offaly, we currently have no special education needs organiser. So if Ukrainian children come into, which they have, into County Offaly, there is no special education needs organiser there to organise things. So I do believe that the gaps need to be addressed. They need to be addressed anyway. But do you feel, is that something that you're coming on as well, or coming up against and have experience of, where there's nobody in place to deal with a situation or to allocate resources to children who need them, who are fleeing war? And I'd imagine it is an issue across the country, not just in my own county. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on particularly the whole need for an assessment, and I believe it's not too late to do that. I believe we should be doing that. This wait-and-see approach, I think, could cause problems, and we certainly don't want one crisis creating another crisis unintentionally. Thank you.
Yep.
So just to speak to that, in terms of impact of huge volumes of students, even if we just speak of the range of Ukrainians who've been placed in Dublin, where there's a high volume of places and a huge number of schools that have substantial wait lists for Irish students, and the prioritisation is being placed for those wait lists that have legacies or other connections. An experience that I am finding with my clients of parents who have approached multiple schools, sometimes upwards of 15 schools, looking for a space for a child in secondary education, and being told, well, that they have to adapt within, that the child will either have to repeat a year or go into a year with a different age group than is appropriate for the child. Huge issues around certain years. First year in particular is a big issue that my clients are experiencing, and there's no provision being placed to adapt for that there are children of this age that need to be placed in schools, and if schools are within the restrictions of how many students they can have in a class, we're in a summer month period now whereby something could be introduced, some exceptions could be placed in that would allow for schools to expand their classrooms to accommodate these children. And I think that this summer month period is a time where action should be put in place, given it is a pause where it can give a chance for caseworkers, supporters, parents of Ukrainian children to find appropriate school and placement and a guarantee, which will then remove that sense of insecurity, both at home for the parents and for the child. And this applies for special education access as well. We are in a window where these holes can be filled.
Yeah, go ahead, yep.
I think from our perspective, what would be really helpful is knowing, I suppose, what level of training schools may need to manage children that are coming in that may be highly traumatised. And I suppose from a trauma-informed care perspective, that starts at the second you have your first contact with that child, coming from an understanding perspective of what has happened to that child, what that child has been through, maybe about to go through, maybe experiencing at home, and understanding, I suppose, training and understanding trauma behaviours. So what they might look like. It won't be the same for all children. For some children it will be a withdrawn, frozen, shut down child that may be a perfectionist and looks like they're doing fine. For other children it might be a highly aggressive, volatile, easily triggered child, and helping schools to understand that they may get on the continuum of trauma any number of children in any position in that continuum. So from our perspective, training for schools, capacity upbuilding, skilling, and support in terms of knowing what to expect and how to even support those children when they also have potentially 30 other children to look after, and also how to talk to children about their experience and the importance of being able to do that. So definitely some level of whether it's an assessment to see what supports are needed, or whether it's an understanding that supports are likely needed in terms of training and upskilling in that regard, would be helpful.
Go ahead, Deb.
I suppose for us at Ombudsman for Children's Office, we share your concerns about the provision of education to these children, especially children with special educational needs. And our office has been quite vocal about this matter over the last few weeks, and indeed we're publishing a report in the coming weeks in relation to forward planning. We know the needs of the children from when they're born, when they're grown into early childhood. We can identify them, so it is questionable as to how can we not plan in advance to meet the needs of children with special educational needs. It's a fundamental right that children have an access to their education, so not having a school placement is a deep concern, especially for children arriving from the Ukraine, as education is where they make their friends, they get to know about this new country they've arrived into, about the language, so it's of critical importance for their recovery that they have a school placement. And I agree with what's been said by my colleagues that this is a pause. This is time to reflect. It is a crisis, but it's time now to gather what's worked, what hasn't worked, and put in a new process for September for the new year. So completely agree.
Can I just make one point? It's more of a general point, but one of the things that we've recommended, and a group of organisations called the Ukraine Civil Society Response Forum, which is more than 60 organisations that have come together to work on Ukraine response, we've said that there needs to be a greater focus on planning, logistics, coordination, and medium and long-term preparation on accommodation and housing fundamentally, but including education. And that could include the appointment of a director of Ukraine response, given that the Department of Children are under huge strain, Department of Education also have a wide and busy brief, and that it would be a director of Ukraine response could not mitigate all these issues, but could help coordinate, plan, ensure better national to local coordination, and bring together central government. Because I think what we're talking about here is, again, it's symptomatic of the fact that Ireland has been very, and we commend this strongly, has given a very strong welcome to refugees from Ukraine, exceptional in many ways, but a short-term humanitarian emergency response has to be matched with a long-term planning methodology, and I think that's probably missing at the moment.
Thanks very much.
Okay.